We're back.
Oh, this is quite a few tales. Okay, we don't know where we lost off, so we'll go again. Hey, guess what? It's Strana. Strana's here finally. I'm the last person.
Yes.
Jeff will tell you about that though.
Yes, I will. All
I'll
right,
try
so we're
not to
back
bumble
live, and I'm very excited. I don't know what anybody missed, if anybody missed anything, what we were doing, where we were at, but I can tell you this much: we're here to have a lot of fun. Once again, I'm Jeff. This is No Dice. If none of this came through in the beginning, we're just going to act like it was a fresh start. Today we have the last member, the lost member, the wayward son, and we're going to carry on with him. That's right, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Strana.
Hello, everyone.
Strana
right.
is here to
You can
talk about.
see my face.
I know. It's scary. Even for the limited time you were on the Twitch prior to this, you never showed your face.
I never
So,
did. This is literally the face reveal for me on this. I before you got to see me having a mouse puppet on my hand. Jay has unfortunately had to see me play with a cat puppet on my hand, but he did not like that pussy. I just have to say.
big reveal. No mouse puppet, no cat puppet.
Just this and my giant pile of junk. So this is what happens when you start crafting. I implore you, don't do this. No, do it. Do it. It's actually a lot of fun.
Crafting is a lot of fun, absolutely. So, that being said, uh, we're here to talk about the end of one campaign, maybe the beginning of another. As I said before, let's start with the fact that you've been in Jay's world in several iterations.
I have.
Throughout throughout the time you've been in what 4 or 5 campaigns that took place in Jay's world, at least 3.
At least that many. One, two, no, 4. At least 4.
Yeah.
There. So in the most recent campaign, the one we just ended, um, there was actually a slight previous campaign that was still in that same arc. So we had Bruce, Mitch playing Bruce, still, but
yes,
I was actually playing,
as we've discussed on prior versions of this. Yeah,
exactly, and I was actually playing a halfling ranger. Now, me being my crazy self, I decided I was from the bayou, so I had a canoe. No matter what, I had a canoe with me somewhere. But I decided that I would infiltrate the sewers as a rat. I would disguise myself as a rat. Now, the way I would do this is I would go get a deer, skin it, craft it into a rat like costume, and wear it in the sewers. That was a bad idea. That was a bad idea. I instantly took a crossbow bolt to the stomach and basically died.
Yes. The old nat 20 on a level 1. Love that routine.
Oh, heavy crossbow to the stomach on a ranger. Slightly deadly. Just slightly. And I think Jay critted too on that. So it was literally just, and I'm out. Times 3 critical.
Dead. It happens to the best of us.
It does. That said, I came back in the campaign with 2 characters. I played both Papadopoulos and Sabobos, and I was obviously the only person to play 2 mainline characters, not all our side characters, which got into all sorts of craziness, randomness,
such madness. Yes. But yes, you were the only one in the main continuity to have 2 characters. Tell me what it was like. I'm not even going to try to salvage the whole thing. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to move all over the place. Tell me what it was like to have 2 characters in the main continuity.
So basically, I had 2 characters because my original character's concept for Sabobus worked well-ish, but not with the character composition that we had. And also, it made sense for him to go off and do other things, which he had to do a lot of times because basically there would be sessions where it's like, and Papadopoulos does this underhanded, slightly tacticky thing off to one side that's not going to come around for 80 sessions.
Right. And definitely didn't. But
it smoothed the way like butter.
Yeah, it definitely helps smooth things over later in those sessions when they did come up. And like as a person who got to see how those things played off and paid off, It was a lot of them were chef's kiss, really good stuff.
Mm. Beautiful.
Prime, it really shows one, not to toot Jay's horn again now with Jay even more visible to the stream, but shows how well he was able to integrate those things. But like the sort of rapport that you and he have as a
Yeah.
player and DM to be able to you kind of set these things in motion and say these sort of things, and even to a certain extent hint at these sort of things, and him to like pick it up and like run with it and understand where you guys where to take it and where you guys were gonna go with it. It's truly a ballet of work between the two of you on that one, and I definitely have to appreciate it. So what per se was the reasoning was it for the second character? Was it just because the first character was a little
I mean, there was a couple things. So Papadopoulos had to go do several things as his character, so it actually made sense for him to break off where he did, because one of the primary driving forces of Papadopoulos was he wanted to make good with his people again, because he was exiled to be the Dwarven spy master in the city. He didn't want to be there, not really. So all his decades and decades and decades of machinations in the city was also that he could get back to the dwarf kingdoms, which in the end he kind of struck off on his own. If we were to continue in the scheme of things, it's like, what would happen to Papadopoulos after this event? Well, I still have a very important hammer to all the dwarven people, and basically I was going to go rebuild a dwarven kingdom, and dwarves have tanks. That was important. I had to nail that into Jay several times. That
dwarves have tanks.
I have tanks now, right? It was.
I love it. I love it.
It just got it. Dwarves have tanks.
Dwarves have tanks.
And actually, the reason, and one of the great things about that was the Tiggerwagon is what brought that about. And it's really kind of funny sometimes. I'm like, wait a second, I can see the technology and do things with it, which is very much Bop. Because, again, Bop is a dwarven spy master left in a city. He hang out with Tig. And one of the reasons is because he's bored. Quite frankly, it's like, well, there's not much to do as the dwarven spy master in the city. There's not much going around in the city that much that's that important to the dwarven race. I'm going to go do something in the meantime.
Right. So you found a pub, and then you end up finding this wild guy named Tig. He's like, I craft things, and you're like, oh, I like this idea. You craft things, I craft things. Let's go. I'm a dwarf.
That could be very important to the dwarven people and me personally. which is one of the reasons why it's like, okay, besides getting this artifact that my king wanted, and this was the vehicle chase at the beginning of the this whole campaign. Besides, and it also kind of shows Bop as a character early on going, here's my planning and machinations. They don't always go right, but I have planning and machinations. It's good. What happens? I'm going to disappear, and I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this, which for a DM perspective is very, very hard to do, because like, I as the character am going to do this thing out on the side nobody can know about or pay attention to.
Oh yeah.
No.
The amount of side chat you had to have with Jay, and like, speaking from a podcast perspective, it's such a strange thing for the podcast in so many ways, because you kind of have to decide, like, do we record the side chat, or do we leave the listener as uninformed as like some of the other players are,
Well, here's actually one of the interesting things about that more than anything else was, at that time, we were still meeting together. We were still coming to a single table to play together. So in reality, one of the things we had to do was we actually had to go stand out on Jay's balcony, whoever was not in the talking with Jay about what was going to happen, because we all had different things we wanted to do. And I will say Bop achieved secondary objective, which was to steal a Tiggerwagon.
He did do that. He had to go back for it, but he went back for it.
I had to go back for it. And funny enough, I had to buy some relatively innocuous magic items that did nothing but torture me.
nothing but torture you, but ended up being very useful,
Yes.
and like surprisingly so.
Yeah.
But
The, the dwarf spent more time under and in water than any dwarf should do.
yeah,
It's very
definitely.
wrong. When the dwarf, it was one of those things where when the dwarf can start out swimming the wildlife, it's a bad sign.
It's a weird one. It's a weird one for sure. Um, you know, one of the things we discussed on the first time we were on air here, uh, which I do want to touch on, but we don't have to go as deep into, is that you love to give your characters a handicap,
Mm,
um, and still end up making them just OP. Let's talk
yes.
about the handicap that you gave your two characters that show up here, and how that ended up not handicapping them very much at all at the end of the day.
Well, it did and it didn't. It what it fundamentally did was it put a thread in their character that I could always, as a person playing that character, could reference back to the ground what I was doing. Because one of the common things is to have your character drift, or for you, instead of playing a character, you're playing yourself.
Yes.
And what you don't always want to do. And I'm
Yeah.
a long time DM. I've been Jay's DM for my own games. Um, and he's played in it. And unfortunately, Jeff, you have not been able to play in any of my
I
games. But
know. I want to.
hey, look, okay, over on that table, I have the start of a town. Eventually, that will become a campaign. I'm still building buildings, and hopefully, I can make that a really interesting one. I'm actually going to do
I
mostly a city
know.
campaign, which is I never do contained campaigns, but I'm going to do one there.
Oh,
Um,
stealing Jay's idea. I like it. I like it.
it's one of those things where I'm like, it would be really interesting to see if I can make, because I grew up on Forgotten Realms. It's a series by I believe Ed Greenwood and a whole bunch of other authors.
Right.
But
Which is the D&D base
no,
world,
actually,
right?
Forgotten Realms was its own thing, but it was so influential that it exploded. It was in somewhat second edition D&D, and it exploded in third and 3.5. They wrote there was an entire line of books on it. God, it was
There was a lot of Forgotten Realms in second edition. But second edition is also the longest running edition.
yes,
So,
yeah.
you know,
The third is like one of the shortest because it was a whoopsie. We need to correct some things. It's a little wrong. 3.5.
yeah, second edition ran for like 15 years before they created another edition. But that also means there's so many source books to second edition. It's insane.
Yes. Well, then,
Um,
and they were still doing floppy, so you have a thinner book, and you need a lot more of them effectively because it's like, oh, it's Waterdeep. Well, it's Waterdeep, the general city, then Waterdeep, this section of the city, and not only that, but Forgotten Realms was a very very detailed world in of itself. And actually, there's jokes made about like the density of wildlife to sustain higher level predators. How possibly could it be? Because it it's like there's this dragon there and a dragon there and a dragon there and a dragon there and a dragon there. That's a lot of dragons.
that's a lot of dragons. What
How
feeds
much?
all these dragons?
How much do they eat per day? It's like, wait, which one of them have kobold, colonies underneath them, or other servant colonies? That one, that one, that one. Oh, and this group up here is just a giant colony of dragons that has human tenders. What the hell? How
Yeah,
many cows do they eat per day? Let's say 1.3 cows. So 1.3 cows, 365 days.
that's
Okay,
a
how many
lot of.
hectares? You can start breaking it down. And it gets silly. It is pretty funny.
Yeah, I'd never thought about the logistics of how much a dragon has to eat, and like a dragon community
Yeah.
being an insane tax on just like
Well,
the
you have the
wildlife.
dragons next to the humans, next to and every bit of that world on top, because you also have the Underdark. I mean, one of the most famous characters for that series is Dris Doden,
Just yeah,
and by was it Salvatore? You know, I read those back in the day. It wasn't my favorite. Actually, my favorite was the Cleric Quintet, and there's actually another book out there that I'm trying to find the series of that actually talks about how the gods work in Forgotten Realms. It's absolutely bizarre, kind of cool.
I'd be
Anywho,
interested in that. Yeah.
anyway, that's but Cleric Quintet is a good one, especially if you want some kind of bumbling dwarf characters. Hey, um,
Sounds familiar.
they might get into problems with things anyway. Um, but no, coming back to Bob. So as Bop, I was a Dwarven spy master, and I was very much a schemer. And one of the problems with that, in going back to your original question, where why did I switch characters? Well, it kind of had to happen in part because Bop was such a schemer, and for the podcast, one, we didn't really have another heavy hitter, uh, and usually in an adventuring group, you want really two at least. We didn't. We had one, really,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Person that could stand on the lines, take hits, push hits out.
A real frontline combatant. We had a few like backliners, including me that I when I joined up, but
we had literally we had the what is the other good way to do it, which is everybody's a half thing, half magic, half something else. So everybody's doing that instead. And actually, if you do that, it compensates all the way around, and it works fine. But with Papadopoulos, I had to do. It's like, okay, you know what? We need a different character. We need, especially for this next section. Also, everybody was kind of an evil, mischievous character, more or less to a certain extent, or like didn't really give a shit about the world effectively, kind of. So Bobos brought Bruce.
I mean, Bruce was the only one who really cared about the world at large around him for a long time.
I was gonna say he did. He did, and then later on didn't. But but Sabobos came in and it's like, no, he cares very much intensely about this, and Sabobos was undergirded by a code of morality that he would have to deal with constantly. In the game, it's like, should I do this? Should I not do this? I have this band of ruffians. I know they're slightly evil, sometimes evil, obviously evil people. How do I reconcile this and my code for living as my paladin, living my paladin life, and keep working towards the end goal? So, that was interesting there. Now, the other thing about Papadopoulos, besides I'm a schemer, I need to do schemy things. And I need to lay these just labyrinthine plans, one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. The other thing that undergirded him was, as a wizard, I did not want to cast direct damage spells. Period.
Yeah. Which is a rough one, especially in this edition.
Oh, I started looking at spells. I'm like, shit. Okay, what can I do? I have a few utilities, and then everything is I kill it. I kill it dead. I kill it dead slightly burned, slightly frozen, slightly whatever. I turned it in. I threw it in a vat of acid, whatever it happened to be, and and that was very difficult because when we started this campaign, I was absolutely new to the 5th edition. Now I've played pretty much all the other editions. I've played Pathfinder, and I've done a lot of other games, but 5th edition was basically brand new at the time. I think we were still having problems with we need more because I was getting some of the books because I would run local pickup games for one of our game stores out here in Corona, California. So I'm doing that. I'm doing that with that and Pathfinder 2nd edition because they're basically coming out at the same time. They still are, but it was so new.
Yeah, it was finding the source books. It was working with the web tools and all that. In the beginning of the podcast, it was a lot of working.
Where is this? Where's this thing? Can we find it? I don't know.
And how does this work? Will this work? Can we do more things? Yeah. And I definitely think looking back at how bumbling we were and sort of the system was. There was a vast improvement between both as we moved along, and it is unfortunate that Bop was in that early stage because you probably if you looked now could find a lot more they've expanded spell lists and stuff like that. It'd probably be a lot easier to make that character now than it was when we first started, especially with how they've adjusted things. I remember. Obviously anybody who listened to the podcast, which hopefully there's at least one or two watching, anybody who listened, if you haven't listened, go ahead and look us up on any of your podcasters. Torchlit Tavern. We completed our first campaign, but anybody who listened will know from the beginning episodes, if you were listening for that long, that the biggest issue that Bob had as a wizard is this idea that he's not casting offensive spells. So what that means
Well,
is
direct damage, specifically direct damage.
he's not casting direct damage spells, which ends up inconveniencing his party members.
So
because
often.
it's like
I cast sleep.
Yeah.
Shit.
He's putting his party members to sleep. He's casting fog cloud and nobody can see.
That said, it was great for you guys to struggle through it. I mean, it really did create more of an atmosphere to those fights when I did that. Because it wasn't just a direct, we run up and we beat it. It's like, crap, Bop did a thing. We have to fix it.
And it definitely did add another element to it. Like and you know, something that I'm sure you know, Jay could, should, or did look at to a certain extent and like draw some ideas out of is kind of the idea of how you can turn something from a straightforward fight into something that involves more sort of complexity, more planning necessity. You know, when somebody drops a fog cloud, like which of the party members can fight in that fog cloud well still, which of them cannot. You know, when somebody's in a globe of darkness, when somebody, you know, casts sleep, how do you prioritize those scenarios and deal with them and stuff like that?
Yeah. And as Bob the character, I had to be very, very careful when I was using it, and I tried to be incredibly careful. But at a certain point, there, especially with sleep, there's a certain amount of friendly fire because if you haven't heard those early episodes, the way sleep fires off is I aim at a point or a person and I go sleep. That said, what happens is basically I roll hit dice, and if it's more than the HP they have at the time, essentially, if you will, I damage them with sleep and they go to sleep. Well, any remaining number, and if it goes to the next person in this area, and if that number's high enough to force them to go to sleep, they go to sleep. So especially in some of our early fights, when our guys were getting hurt, I was causing the enemies to go to sleep and our people to go to sleep.
And the friends, yeah. It was a rough one. And it you know, it infuriated everybody so much, but I do agree that it added such a dynamic element to the fights and to the sort of story of that. And it was a lot of fun. And you know, and then when you came in as Bob, having this moral element be the sort of handicap that you gave him.
You mean Sabobos?
Sorry. Then when you came in as Sabobos, having the moral element be his sort of handicap was really interesting as well. And watching you sort of play that, you know, and like honestly not knowing at the time that was his handicap, but like now looking back and like you always being like, are you sure you want to do this? But like the funny thing is, as often the situation is when you handicap one of your characters, it ends up just making them more badass in some way by accident, because now he's going, are you sure? And smiting them straight to heaven when they're sure they're not going to give up. Here's your opportunity to give up. What?
It's like I gave you a chance. I gave you a chance.
I gave you a chance.
Now you get to go meet whatever deity you happen to praise.
Now you get to meet the god of your choosing. I'd say you should meet my god personally, but that's just not the way it works. You know, like
and that's not what you went with. So you know what? Sorry, you go meet yours. Go have fun. No, that was something very specific with Sabobos. But I tend to do this with all my characters. I limit them in some weird way, and I'll choose an archetype or I'll choose a goal that sometimes it's an arbitrary goal and sometimes it's a game's mechanics goal. Like you know, I built a catfolk that could run past the speed of sound, which Jay loved, didn't you, Jay? He's sitting there, head in the background.
Yes, Jay, our silent contributor. He's probably not even listening to us right now.
I don't think he is. Anyway. No. We got a finger. There we go.
There
pointed.
He is.
It was a pointed remark delivered via hand. But no, I had a catfolk that could run past the speed of sound. And that's one of the things I'll do is I'll have a gimmick for a character. I don't necessarily build a really really powerful character, but this gimmick in the rules, I'll push it as far as I can, especially if it's not a direct "I'm killing you with dice" thing. Um,
Right.
Very rarely do I do it because usually that's a really really obvious answer. Case in point, I had the Blender kitties. So
Yes.
this was actually in this was the Just Two previous campaign. It was a different time setting than the one we did, and
But in the same world.
but in the same world exactly.
Okay.
And consequently, the whole idea is I had a cat, and it was literally a household cat. That's what I started with. And the whole idea was the cat had leadership feats, which it had all these underlings. That's I only ever messed with the main cat, a secondary cat, and then the cat folk druid that rode a dire tiger. Remember, cats was a theme. So
Clearly. Yeah.
cat on the corner. Although that's actually funny enough, not my cat. I don't own cats. I own dogs. It is what it is. But anyway, but one of the things I did that for was if Jay as the DM needed to chuck my cat against a wall or do something to stop the cat from being a pain in the butt, you can, because it's a cat, and especially in 3.5/Pathfinder, you can just pick the cat up, and the cat can't do much to you. Just instantly can't do it. It's like this thing that can do several hundred, all combined, the cat force can do on average, totally average rules, well over 200 damage, usually 300 or more. So per round, mind you.
Per round, yeah.
Per round.
Just
so
fucking annihilate things. But you just kick it and it's down.
Yeah, you pick it up and it can't do anything, or you sit against undead and it can't do anything, or oozes and it can't do anything, or elementals and it can't do anything. So there's a lot of ways to deal with my characters on it, and I tend to leave those in because just in case I do go a little bit crazy, it's like, you know what? Let's not go too crazy with this character. And actually, I live with cats because Randall was at the table with us at that time, and he was playing a ranger, and I had the cats come in, and he had never. This was the first session with the cats coming in, and I got within several hundred feet of for a round one combat. Everybody else is stealthed much closer, but because I have two cats riding a dire tiger with a catfolk druid riding the dire tiger, everything could deploy forward on the movement of the dire tiger. The cats would hop off. Now I have flanking. I have sneak attack. Blender kitty. Instant red mist, and it was a huge damage output. And one of the things though is it's like, this is ridiculous. Strana can't. This is ridiculous. So the next session, I brought the naked human. The naked human had exactly 2 daggers, nothing else, and his damage output was more than the cat's average per round. So average to average, his output was higher. And at that point, I never got complaints about the cats again. Because that wasn't even me trying. I'm like, yeah, that'll do more damage.
You are a madman, and you just know how to break systems, and you don't even try. And that's the hilarity of it. A lot of people are out there like, working on min-maxing their characters, and they're like, I want the toughest and the strongest. And you're like, I want to make this quirky character. And you're like, and everybody's like, how come you min-max that character? And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is my fun little character. He does fun little things.
What does it do? It can run really fast. How is that terrifying? You will never see me until I suddenly appear before you, launch several arrows into you, and then like
zoom away.
Gonzalez out of there, and you don't see me. I'm behind something. You can't see me. You can't catch up to me. You cannot run as fast as I can walk in that round. You are not going to find me. It's like, unless you are literally some sort of upraised druid enchanted cheetah, good luck.
Yeah, and I love that. It's so killer.
But again, immovable rods would be not my friend.
Oh God.
It's like, what is it? Do you see it in time? Just a minefield of immovable rods. That character just goes.
Oh yeah, it kills itself quick.
Yep.
Then you gotta start calculating movement damage. Oh, it's a whole other thing. Too much
And
math.
think about it this way: falling is 1d6 per 10 feet. I'm effectively going faster than you fall, so it's not that much of an issue. You just call it falling damage.
Fuck you right there. You are right there.
And the character would die. But
No.
anyway, but no, I brought Sabobus in, and Sabobus was very much a different character, so much more melee focused. I don't commonly play paladins. I tend to play druids, and I tend to play rangers. That tends to be my fun part. Like actually playing Bop as the wizard with no direct offensive magic was quite a takeaway from what I typically tend to do. Also, so imagine that, and part of this is because I play a DM. I can build a whole bunch of characters all I want, and I do occasionally, and shenanigans ensue. Shenanigans like the jar of syphilis. Should I tell the jar of syphilis story?
You can't bring up the jar of syphilis and not tell it. But go ahead and give it a short version.
Okay.
Give us the abridged.
Okay, so this is a campaign where I played with Jay, one of our other friends, and I was DMing. And every once in a while we'd have somebody else. But the main thing was they're in the capital city's playground city. So this is like the vacation resort town where all the nobles and everybody else comes to, and this is where they spend their time when court is not in session, essentially. So consequently, money is everywhere. Magic is not a problem. The finest things in life are in the city. And they were having a slight orc problem. But what do you do when you have this much money and resource and everything else? You go, why spend our men on it? These adventurers, they just go and kill things for a pittance. Put a couple thousand gold, 100 gold ahead. Why not? That's more than enough. That'll cleanse the orc army. All of them will jump at that chance. So that's how they got a whole bunch of money. And they're all Jay and my other friend, they were both drunk at the time, and consequently, they went to a bordello in the red light district. And one of the principles I do as a DM is I have, if you roll a d20 when you're trying to do something and you get a 20, it succeeds. I have to make up why it succeeds, or just out of the blue it succeeds. If you've ever played a RPG game called Exalted, which is a D10 based system, in that one actually the characters warp the reality of the world. It's kind of interesting thought play, but essentially.
I'm intrigued by that. I might have tried it sometime.
It's an interesting one. The reality of the world gets warped, and they're drunk and they slurred. They wanted something else, but instead it came out as "I want some syphilis." So I'm like, roll d20, nat 20. Shit. The bartender comes out with a jar of syphilis. And then they're just confused that they have a jar of syphilis. Now, the funny part is, and they didn't know it at the time, they didn't know until later, but that bordello was basically a clan of were-rats. And they're just earning money. But one of the things with were-rats is they're resistant to disease. They can't get diseases. Well, it's not right for a bordello not to have disease. So
you gotta have disease every once in a while.
You got every once in a while to throw suspicion off track. It's like, why is that? Why is she the high priced one? Well, she doesn't have the clap.
Yes, to control market value as well. Wow.
Yeah. Basically, it was really kind of it was a really funny thing. Like later on, the friend actually has an issue, which I'll talk about in a second. But anyway, the jar of syphilis. So consequently, the reason they had the jar of syphilis was all were-rats, and that's the way they can pass out syphilis occasionally to make sure the authorities don't figure out what they're doing and what they are and wipe them out. It's like they cover their bases. All of them, even the nasty ones.
You got to keep your bases covered. You got to keep them covered.
But anyway, I do get absolutely bizarre things like that, and I tend to run pretty hard and intense games.
That's what I've heard. I've heard you don't pull your punches.
I don't, and it is wonderful when it works because when I design a dungeon, I don't change it typically. I very rarely, and I have to almost do party wipes, and even then I'll still wipe a party if you do something stupid enough.
Yeah.
Somewhere I have a shirt that says on it, "Are you sure?" And there's a D20 boulder dice with a whole bunch of dead characters underneath of it. I'm like, oh, that's my DMing shirt. I found it online one day. I'm like, that's my DMing shirt. Because I will go. It's like, are you sure you want to do that? And my players learn
shakes
like
you to the bone as a player. Are you sure? Like, fuck, I don't know anymore.
And sometimes it's absolutely benign.
Of course.
Because I like, and one of the things is I like traps. Jay knows this. I like traps. Sure. Because it tends to be that they don't check it, and they are there. And so they were playing this dungeon, and they're going through, and they're checking everything. And they're like, there's been no traps here. There's no traps here. I had one trap in that entire dungeon. Jay opens the door. Immediately, a wall of darts, poison darts, hit him head to toe. He's just covered him. He's like, there's no traps. Ow.
Until there was traps.
There's one trap in it. But, it's fun things like that. But anyway, because of that, I keep having to invent characters. And actually, Jay was, if you can ever get him to tell you the story of the Great Del Dawn, that's a pretty good story.
I love the story of the Great Del Dawn. Oh, man. We'll definitely have.
That campaign.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I back in high school, I had a buddy of mine, and we did a little bit of computer programming, and we had a really basic like disease modeling vector calculation that we had. And basically, I used that to
plot the lies he made, right? The stories he told.
Because the way it worked for Jay was his character could tell other characters and NPCs thing, and they used his his bluff check, his positives.
Yeah.
And he had so many positives that it's like, okay, well, rumors just spread about him. And basically I had to go, okay, if this is so powerful, there's going to be more of these people in this city. They're going to be a little bit more subtle with it than the Great Del Dawn is. So literally I had like multiple factors of who was convincing who of what that I kept track of on an Excel spreadsheet, which is on some old computer now. But I'm like, damn it, Jay, you're making me do work in between sessions for your rumor control.
That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons we're on Twitch at all. Is that Jay said I have a character idea, and I was like, I love your characters. I will run the game for you, and that brought us here. But with all that being said, let's get into, because we've been doing this for a little while now. So let's get into the next stage of this, which is you made it with us all the way through, right?
Yes.
Even though you took a big break in the middle, you made it you were there pretty much in the beginning, and you were there definitely at the end.
Yeah.
And
so in IRL, I started trucking. So I left my previous job, and I started trucking, and I did over the road. So I was actually going all the way across the nation. So COVID hit, and I just kept working. I was crisscrossing the nation back and forth, and there was a few times where I could join them in a few sessions here and there, but it was generally very, very difficult to me because I had to force the stream through my cell phone connection, which didn't like it because it's video heavy, and it would max it out and then would clamp and restrict it. So there was, so we do it, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, everybody, turn your video off. Turn your video off. I can only listen to you all.
Yeah.
Otherwise, my unit's going to take a shit.
Yeah.
And actually, the last episode we recorded, I was up north of Sacramento in a little town called Willows.
Yeah.
And I was near one of my company at the time's terminals. Parked in what little shade I could find, because although it's called Willows, there's no trees around me. And it was 110 or 114 degrees.
Oh yeah.
I am in a tin box. In fact, these guys still owe me ice cream for this.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. What a trooper you are. The commitment to it in this tin box. And, we record a podcast. We got to make sure the sound's good and everything. So there's no AC going. Yeah. And you're in that fucking tin box.
The windows are up. All the vents are closed. There's no AC running. Nothing. I'm on the floor of the vehicle so I can get at the coldest air I can, and there's not a lot of it.
We appreciate your commitment to
I
coming in and helping us finish it up.
God,
And
and I,
what a like I say, what a trooper, man. What a fucking
well, here's the thing. I was sweating so hard, I was gluing myself to the floor of my truck because of the salt. It was solidifying around me. Like when we would take breaks, I'd turn on the AC, cool everything down, go in, get soda, get Landnachtjager, which is kind of a really salty sausage.
uh-huh.
So I'm eating as much salt as I can to try to keep everything rolling. That's the only way I made it. That and I'd have ice cream. So it was sugar and salt, some more salt, and actually that was one of the few times I was drinking water. Was I then would drink water through the rest of the session so I could keep going. But I'd have to salt load in the front of it, so I had enough to get through.
Get through the whole thing, yeah.
Oh God, it was
We're
absolutely
you
horrid.
know what? And we
Absolutely horrid.
appreciate and we can't express how much we appreciated your sacrifice there because at the end of the day, it was so great to have you there at the end
No,
and
it, it, it was terrific. Yeah.
to be able to sort of bring it full circle. A couple of the questions that I've asked everybody that I want to ask you is and this one you're gonna have two. You may have two answers to, which the first one that I'll ask is: Are there any? Was there any point? What's the better way? What's the first one to ask? The first one to ask uh, is there anything you would have done different for the ending of both of your characters that didn't show up, or did it come out exactly the way you kind of wanted it? How do you feel about that as far as your story and your characters?
I mean, the truth of the matter is, I wish I could have done a little bit more with Saboas. Unfortunately, just circumstances at the time meant that he kind of had to fade away and do his thing. So that was kind of unfortunate. It was great that I got to have Bop back because I was now my more powerful wizard.
Yeah, much more powerful.
As Jay all of a sudden discovered when I turned into a dragon.
It's not strictly an offensive spell.
It's not strictly an offensive spell. And even then, what is I tried to melt the cage so that they'd fall into the ocean. Like, if you look at how I used it, it wasn't even a direct attack initially. It was like, let's make them stop. They keep coming. Okay, well, no, I actually have to kill them because I can't. This has to be contained.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was killer.
Oh, and besides, everybody else got the ride on a dragon. That's how it works.
That's true. That's true. Ryan really loved being able to ride a dragon as Roy. It was really the highlight of those last couple sessions for sure.
Yeah. So no, I mean, and also because Jay got to use all the all or not all, but a lot of the elements that I put in early as Bop with plans and schemes and everything else that then came to fruition at the end. Because it's like, yes, my character did a thing. It finally mattered, 80, 90, 100 episodes later. And it's the whole reason the characters weren't just dragging their asses through the last couple encounters. Because it's like, what is it? Oh, well, Bop's actually prepped for this. What do you mean Bop's prepped for this? Oh, well, he's done this and this and this and this and this. I don't remember that. Oh wait, I do remember that.
I do.
Was that what he was doing?
Oh, yeah. That's what he was doing. Yeah. No, it definitely helped for a couple of really key points, including the secret session that me and Ryan had of saving the king. Yes. That was very helpful there.
Yep. Imagine that a guy that specializes in skullduggery is good at it.
As it turns out, my friend. Yeah, I too was a little bummed that we couldn't really give Sabobos his due at the end of that.
Yeah.
But like you say, circumstances just didn't allow. It would have kind of drawn away from that whole thing. And we really, the peek behind the curtain is we definitely sat down and had discussions about it.
Yeah.
While you were able to use your AC, of course.
Which was most enjoyable. I was very thankful for it.
Yeah, and we had discussions about it and really decided it was for the best that we just sort of like hint at what's going on with him.
Yeah. Because besides that, in the next campaign, things are going to matter, and our eagle-eyed audience is gonna pick up, I think, on a lot of the otherwise relatively subtle cues that'll be there.
Absolutely. Well, and as we've discussed throughout some of these other episodes of No Dice and this one specifically, this is all his same world. So everything you and several other of the people who have played have already affected his world. You are moving, yes, breathing pieces of his world as it stands. We could run into the cat tornado at some stage.
Yes, if you ever see a flying grove, run.
Okay, I'm going to remember that. If I ever see a flying grove, I am going to escape it.
Yeah,
if at all possible.
It's not fast. It's implacable.
But I'm very intrigued to see how you're the stuff you've done and Mitch has done, and now that we have done will affect the world moving forward. But the next question that I've asked everyone before we move into this new phase of like asking you some questions about this, where you think we're going here in the future, is there anything specifically that kind of got left on the chopping floor that like you're like, or something that an idea you had that didn't quite make it on in some way, shape, or form? Anything you sort of regret that didn't get as much light or attention as you hoped or planned on it for either character?
Well, I'll say this much. Through the main campaign, I wish I could have used Papadopoulos more, but it was so necessary to switch him out for party personality disposition. Because, like, behind the scenes, guess what? If you've ever seen Mitch, I'm very much also a LARPer. You can say Strana in the local LARP community, and if they've been in it long enough, obviously I haven't gone to several games in a couple of years now, but they'll know it, and usually staff will know it, and not for bad things. But I've helped run games.
Of course.
Several games I've played. I tend to be the guy that walks around with a giant pile of weapons because hopefully soon I'll be able to restart my LARP weapon creation, along with all my other crap I have going around the background.
Yes, all your other crafting dreams.
Color printer, 3D printer, 3D printer, 3D printer. Off over there is another 3D printer. Off in the garage is a laser cutter. I just got a commercial grade wood saw, and my uncle decided to move to Hawaii, so I now have God knows how many thousands of dollars of hardwood sitting on the backside of the house.
Fantastic.
That are, you can't necessarily use them for anything particular, but it's hardwood is hardwood is hardwood, especially right now. Price of wood is absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Especially in California. When you start seeing Canadian common board come in rather than Oregon or Washington, something's a bit wrong. They have to put that on a train and run it from Canada to Southern California.
It's a bit strange. It's a bit off. I'll tell you that much. It is a bit off. But
beside the point.
Beside the point, yes, definitely. Where were you going with that?
At this point, I don't know. I absolutely forgot what I was going with that point. I'm going to blame this.
That probably has something to do with it. That's okay. Well, we were discussing things that you wanted, that you were not ashamed. A little saddened.
I wish I could have done more Sabobos, but Sabobos, but with Papadopoulos, and because there's several things I wanted to do with him as a dwarf, inventing things, and actually one of the biggest wrenches that Jay threw my way was the mystical Dwarven hammer. Because that shifted a lot of things. Because all of a sudden, the Thrain was no longer the pinnacle of Dwarven society, effectively to Papadopoulos. All of a sudden, in truth, he had the ancestor hammer. Yes. He needs to play nice with the king because he needs to build up civilization. But the fact of the matter is, essentially, some might say chance, some might say divine providence. But all of a sudden, he has the fundamental touchstone of the dwarven race, at least as he sees it.
Right. Yeah.
So I didn't get to do a lot there. That was one of the plot lines that was kind of left off to one side,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And I referenced that a little bit in the as as everybody walks into the sunset, Boptopoulos goes back and starts building a dwarven kingdom. So that's something slightly important. Oh, and dwarves have tanks.
The old dwarves have tanks. We're gonna start a dwarves have tanks thread on Twitter, just so you're ready for that. Dwarves have tanks. Hashtag Torchlight Tavern. Hashtag Dwarves have tanks. And you know what? And I love it. I love that Dwarves have tanks. I love your commitment to the idea and the story.
Well, that and because I insisted on it so much, Jay had them appear at the end. I like very very relatively briefly. So they are canon within the game world. Dwarves have tanks.
Absolutely, and you know what? Who knows where we're gonna go into the future with that? But I get it. I understand the idea of being a bit. You had so much on your table, of like these two characters and where being able and your work life, running having any version of D&D game that's anywhere near regular in today's world as adults is hard enough. What's your schedule look like? What's yours look like? It's so complicated, and the fact that you were trying so hard to be there, all it can do is tip my hat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like even now, it's like I wish I had more time to spend with you guys, but it's like I don't. My weekends are Wednesday, Thursday, which is why we're doing this when we are, because essentially this is my Saturday evening.
Luckily enough, it's already the day we were doing it, so it's perfect.
Yeah, it's just how it works out. But it's like I don't have weekends otherwise. I have to take time off, which isn't a big problem for me because if you don't know, the world needs truck drivers. There's not that many of them, and if I don't feel like coming into work, I won't come into work. And of course, here's also the other flip side of that. I don't not come into work except for a couple things. One, I've worked essentially 2 days in one day, and if you know what that is, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not admitting to anything though. No. And the other thing is when I'm actually sick, which I'm like, I'm not coming in. Why? Because I'm sick. It's like, you sound terrible. That's why I'm not coming in.
Now you understand. Yeah.
So I've only had 3 days off that weren't like planned way in ahead of time. If you went to LA Comic-Con and you were in the area, sales area, I was actually running a D&D game on that Sunday. So hey, you missed me.
We here at Torch the Tavern, actually, many of us were there, but not Sunday. We were there Saturday, and of course, because we're awful at keeping in touch with each other sometimes, we had no idea. We near missed each other.
Yeah, I was there, I think Saturday around 5, I want to say.
Oh, you got there literally after we left then. We left at around 4.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Timing.
That's hilarious.
Welcome to how this usually works.
Yeah, of course. But obviously you're big in the community, you're big in the LARP community, you're big in the D&D community or the tabletop role-playing community. You're running stuff locally for everything. It's clearly a love of yours, as it is a love of ours, that's kind of the whole reason we're doing this Torchlit Tavern thing, and we're expanding so much to having discussions and doing all those things. We love telling stories. Obviously, we love this tabletop role-playing thing. It's a lot of fun. And we love to share with anybody who's listening. And, for those listening currently, thank you very much for being here and listening to us ramble on.
You didn't have to be, but you joined us.
But you joined us anyway, and we really appreciate that. Really, really, we do.
Hopefully, I was a little entertaining. I hope.
Hopefully. But we're not done yet. Now we get into the nitty gritty of questions. The hype up. The reason that I wanted to start this thing to begin with was to get some of our pat ourselves on the back for finishing a campaign, because That's tough. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal for if you play tabletop role playing games of any kind. You know that's a big deal because like
even the shortest of holiday modules to try to get them done in one session.
To get to the I've never seen a module finish in one session. And I've played.
I've done it once.
I have played 10-hour sessions too, mind you, and I've still never seen a module finished in one session.
No, I've done it technically twice because funny enough, at the LA Comic Convention, I actually ran an entire module and they actually got through the entire thing.
That's insane. That's insane.
It was a lot of timing there. Actually, they didn't attack everything? Hey,
that's not how you play that game. Tell them they did it wrong.
Hey, they got the. Funny enough, they were on a skyship at the end with a giant cannon, and they missed the cannon shot. And one of them remembered, and this is one of the things I tend to do. They had a box of unidentified poisons, so they shoved it down this sea serpent's gullet, and that's how they killed it. Otherwise, they were going to die.
Fantastic.
Again, don't pull punches. I give you the option of how to solve it. You could have literally rolled a 2. Like everybody was hoping aim the cannon. They had a relatively high skill. They rolled a 2 and missed. I'm just like, you only had to get a 5. 5, you would have hit it. You got a 2. At least it wasn't 1, and you're all dead because they exploded.
Could have been worse.
Like just the right amount of failure.
Of course, it's a fine line of failure. You got to ride there sometimes. Mm-hmm. But with all that being said,
yes.
Enough prostrating ourselves. Is prostrating the right word there? I don't know. Enough self-masturbatory congratulations about completing our first campaign. We are moving into our second campaign. We are still in the same world. We are expanding this universe that we have now shown the loyal viewers out there of the podcast. Viewers, of course, being listeners of the podcast. If you're a viewer of this Twitch stream, my world is not at all connected to Jay's world. If you watch the game I run, it is not the same, but please go listen to our podcast. It's great. That being said, moving into the next world, what are some of the things that you, even though I know, like, as we've discussed, because of life and everything, is not something that you can unfortunately be a part of.
I won't be there except maybe special,
maybe some special occasions. Yeah. I would love to see that. I can't wait. But as now a primarily a listener, what are some of the things you're excited about? Some of the things you want to see expanded upon? And before you even say it, I know dwarves have tanks, and I'm excited to see that expanded upon as well. But what are some of the other things?
Well, what you seem to forget is dwarves have tanks, but gnomes have aircraft.
Oh, you're right.
Yes, I am.
Do have aircraft.
Yes, it's not better. Besides that, and there are also now druidic holy artifacts that are floating around the sky. That's just a little clue. Whether it pops up in the adventures, I don't know. It might happen.
That is quite interesting. Quite interesting indeed.
But also, you now have a resurgent, or hopefully it'll be we'll see. I don't know how far you guys are jumping in the time world.
So what we've kind of given up already is that it'll be a bit of a time jump. We're somewhere around 20 years, I believe, is the time jump.
Okay, so basically, I would imagine that dwarves are slow and certain in what they do. So definitely, Papadopoulos' old stomping ground is going to be building up again, and they've had 20 years to do it, and
things have changed drastically for Griffin Port. Griffin Port.
It's the port of Griffin. No, the Griffin Port. Thing. What? The port.
Griffin Port. Yeah.
Where are we going? We're going to Griffin Port. Why are you going there? We're going there because there's griffins. No, it's because that's what a griff is. Griff is our contact, you wee naked bugger.
Wayne. No. So yeah, there's a lot of this change there in Griffinport as well. After all of this face stuff happening, it'll never be the same.
Yeah. So you have the dwarves basically building up their kingdom again. Because I mean, one of the things with the hammer artifact more than anything else is it's a basic stepping. It's kind of like, it's if I would almost say it's the dwarven ark of the covenant. It's this mystical thing that can do mystical stuff by building stuff, or in this case, building stuff because it's a hammer and that's its intrinsic nature. Um, but it can do that, and it can empower. And imagine an artifact of that level that builds instead of destroys. So that will be a very interesting thing. And besides that, where Bopodopoulos, his ancestral mountain home is, the dwarves all moved around effectively. So you now would have had a power vacuum that he's returning into, and he's got tanks. He's got Azer.
Yeah.
So
he did
the fire
make a strong
dwarves.
connection with the Azer. Yeah.
So I now have Fire Dwarf, Azer, multi-dimensional allies. I have tanks. I have flying ships because he's just magical flying ships.
That is true. I mean, and you also happen to know, or Bop does at least, also happens to know the mantle holder for the kingdom, the realm of spring now. So that's a thing. There's a lot of connections there. So
exactly.
So you see Bop going back to his ancestral home. You think you want to see, you imagine he's working on rebuilding that ancestral mountain. Where do you think that is?
It's to the east and south of our. It's to the east and south, if I remember right. I have a cardinal direction. Do we actually know where it is? No, because we never got that specific.
No, absolutely. Well, so now what you've done is you sparked my brain, because what I know, the little bit of that I do know of what's going on is how is. Yes, I 100% want to know where Bop is from.
It's the Bop's ancestral mountain home.
Ancestral mountain home. Where's that?
Because we did write this down at one point.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, so he's not even on the continent.
No.
Okay. Now I'm very intrigued by that. So, with that being said,
yeah,
right, because they lived in with the volcanoes. So, with that being said, now that we're moving into this things that we're looking forward to in the future, I know that what you've been telling me is that you're excited for what Bop's part in all of this is. Now, I'm more excited to see exactly how that manifests. Is Bop going to go back to his actual home or to the ancestral home of the old empire of the dwarves? And how does that affect the geopolitics that are currently existing? Because as we left off, we were kind of in a war between some of the major countries. And as we, move forward without getting into too many details that I don't necessarily want to give away or can give away, I know that that's going to be a big part of that. Do you think that Bop's going to be involved in any of that, or is he going to avoid it altogether? Uh-oh. Did we lose him? I rambled too hard. I broke him. Viewers, I've broken my friend. My dear friend. If we wait long enough, maybe he'll come back. Well, anyways, in case he doesn't come back, I'm going to keep rambling for a little while longer. having had this conversation with Strana here, uh, it is. Oh, there he goes. Having had this conversation with Strana, it is exciting to see the potential possibilities of where things are going to go and where we're going to move forward in this next campaign. If you didn't watch, I'm going to be, Jay, you should come back. Oh no, he probably can't hear me no more. Jay, come check on the screen. There you go. Here you are. Hey, yeah, he froze and lagged out. But I'm still talking to the people here. It's just now it's like you can see like this much of my face on one of the screens, but it's okay. You don't need to see my face that much. Um, with that being said, after having heard some of the stuff he's excited for next campaign, I'm very interested to see how that goes, how Bop's plans may affect the overall world, where we're taking all of this, these interesting pieces and elements. And, you know, I hope that you are, as a viewer and a listener, as excited as I am for this next step, because we've got so much world that we've built and so much more to build around it. You know, Jay's still leading the charge, and we're just fucking making these bumbling motherfuckers that are just gonna get in there and see what we can find out and see what we can do. And it is a new adventure and a brand new story around the corner. And I personally can't wait to experience it. But more than that, I cannot wait for you to experience it with us and be a part of that. So if you're not listening to our podcast, if you don't want to have to go back to episode 50 where there was a recap, or episode 100 where there was a recap, and listen to the old podcast, we've got the new campaign getting ready to start the beginning of next year. It is very exciting. We're looking at not super beginning. We're looking about February of next year. We're going to start the new campaign. We are, of course, still trying to produce on our podcast. We're doing little side episodes, this, that, and the third. You can find us uh, on Twitter and on Facebook and anywhere that matters. Just put in the Torchlit Tavern on the Googles, and you will find us. And I hope you come and join us on this wild adventure. Um, Furthermore, we are working and striving to produce more stuff on this Twitch channel for you. So if you're here with us and you're rocking, thank you again. Please subscribe, follow, whatever it is. We're working our way up to affiliate, and we're so dang close. So we do this show every other Wednesday, and then when the Wednesdays that we're not doing this show, we do a game that I run with some of the people from the podcast. We're about to expand that. We're thinking about one of our players from the podcast, or not the podcast, from uh, the Twitch game, might be coming on Mondays, starting a little show there where she has a open discussion about just DMing and such. Oh, well, look at that! We got Strana back.
So, sorry, it's going to get more noisy now. I ran over my allotted time.
So that's all right. Well, we were looking at we're moving towards ending anyway. So I was just giving my final plugs. I'll finish that out. We are looking at having some more programs on our Twitch channel, including maybe a Monday night show with our lovely lady Katie, who's on the Twitch stream, and Ulven is also looking into starting another show on here. We are starting to stream some of us just playing video games and having fun. But before we go, Strana, is there anything else you want to say about this the upcoming campaign or the last campaign? Anything you want to get off your chest about this whole experience that we've been a part of?
No, I mean, this was awesome. The fact that we got to finish a campaign with these characters. Interestingly enough, both my characters in the end ended up as civilization founders.
Absolutely.
So Boba's in the way because it's like he's basically leading a renegade section of the church, which he believes is more true than the main church.
Yes, I believe it's more true than the main church as well. So
yeah, see, and then we have obviously Papadopoulos with his specific clan of dwarves. Basically, it's kind of interesting. Papadopoulos sometimes acts undwarven, and then all of a sudden we'll get much more dwarven. It is very, very, very particular on how much other dwarves are acting dwarven.
it is very interesting.
One of the funny things. No,
I mean, as I said, as you kind of dropped out there, I'm very intrigued to see how as these, and now I wasn't even thinking about Sabobos, but how these two characters who are kind of building some version of civilization are going to be a part of this new stage of things. As I know, geopolitics is going to be a bigger part of this next campaign and this next stage.
Oh yeah, and well, we have the cold scales, which we can go revisit. We have Civilization of Cats.
Cats and cold scales. Oh, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, we're gonna have we got all kinds of things around the corner, all kinds of stuff that we may visit, that we may come across, and I'm almost baffled by it. I'm certain that all that we're discussing right now is gonna come in at a certain point, and by that I mean I'm certain that there'll be a one point or another where Jay's gonna call you and he's gonna be like, "Where did you think you wanted Sabobos to be exactly?" And you're gonna be like, "Well," and then we're gonna that's because that's gonna have to matter, right?
Yeah.
The world he builds and how he intermingles it, it all of it matters, and all of it is interesting. And I can't. Oh, like I said, I'm very excited to see where we go with this next stage.
No, I think it'll be absolutely great. Hopefully once we get some descriptors, it's actually one of those things where I want to go back to our, first podcast and go through and chronicle things and actually try to start writing it down as much more of a narrative text format. So that's one of the projects I have sitting on my back burner right now while I try to get the house I'm living in fixed.
You want to novelize?
Yes.
Our campaign?
See if I can do it. If nothing else, it'll be good practice. Maybe it'll release to Patreons. I don't know when I'll do it or how fast I'll do it. But I'll tell you this much.
You know what?
I got my grandmother's typewriter and I found ribbon for it. That's
you
right.
I'm going. It and you want a typewriter? Write it?
Yes. Yes, Jay. Jay, did you want to say something?
This is insanity. Clack, 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 clack. Oh man, you know what? You go ahead and novelize that. I love it. One of the things that has been a theme for the end of this year and the beginning of this coming year for us at Torchlit Tavern is let's expand and do more things and have more fun with it. So every project that is on the table for every one of us of the extended family of Torchlit Tavern, I just love all the energy that's coming from it. I can't wait to see even the first couple of chapters of this novelization.
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll blow my mind.
Yeah, I'll see exactly how I have to work it because. But hey, you'll get to see it. And it's like, what is this? I don't know, but it's like utter dog's turds right now. We're gonna try to make it better.
Hey, you know what? Mythbusters taught me you can polish a turd, so I believe in you, bud.
You can always polish turds. I used to work in the sewer department.
Yes, of course.
You could say that all sewer work is just polishing turds. Right off the side of a wall. All right.
But yeah, I you know what? I can't wait to see what you have to do, what you're doing, and what else you bring. And obviously, we love to have you here, and we're gonna make sure we keep you involved. And if you have Wednesdays open, keep an eye out for a phone call. Maybe I'll have you come in for a special guest on one of the Torchlit Twitch games that I'm running. So
They
we'll
tell
see.
me I can do voices of all sorts of things. We never really did anything like that. Yes, we have done everything. There are no problems in this world.
I can't wait. But we'll keep you posted, and we'll keep everybody else posted on the crazy things that are happening in our minds and your minds and Jay's mind. And with that said, thank you for being able to make it, for completing the set. I now have the perfect collection of interviews from every single cast member of the original Torchlit Tavern, and all I can say is that now that we've gotten the set complete, we're gonna get into some much weirder conversations about much broader things, and more's to come. I think the next session we're either gonna do editors or a bunch of DMs on it, and I'll see who's willing to do that. And
As I tried, but never did finish editing anything. I did edit myself occasionally and send that up because it was so bad. So much background noise just make change.
You were
once or twice.
You were a bit of a fidgeter.
A bit. It's like I have not lived in houses newer than 1985, I think. Oof, and as I've gotten older, my houses that I live in have gotten older.
Funny how that works.
The house I'm currently in is the second house on the property. The original house was built primarily out of telephone poles, when you could still do that.
Wild.
In the grandfather's father's time.
Well, like I said, I think it's about time we wrap this up. We've been on and off this stream since like 8. So I think we've given them enough.
I was here at 7.
So you know what?
Start time was 7:30.
We tried. We tried to start at 7:30. There was a little technical difficulties. So for all you who joined us, thank you for joining us. Look out for us. Look out for us on this Twitch channel. We try to do as much stuff as we can. Go ahead and find us, Torchlit Tavern. We have almost every kind of social media. We got a podcast. Please go listen. Thank you for joining us. As I've said, thank you, Strana. Thank you, Jay, for coming in and saving the day. And have a good night. And don't forget to tell good